Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is the beginning of the third discourse, the first class number one, in the Maamor called Vayichan Shom Yisroel, which is the third discourse in the great book B'Shosh Agdimu 5672. This is exciting. Three times we'll establish it as something permanent and strong and solid. This is fantastic. I want to thank Mendy. I don't know who Mendy is, but Mendy sent a sponsorship, a contribution to sponsor a few classes. So let's study. He didn't give me any information, neither who Mendy is and either for what he's dedicating and which classes he's dedicating. So let's apply it to the first four classes of the new discourse that's coming about. So Mendy, all the blessings to you. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Here we go. So we are now continuing to explore what we mentioned in the previous class. In the previous classes, we were talking, this discourse completes the ideas in the last discourse to resolve the contradictory statements regarding the world of Atzilus, whether Atzilus is something new. That means that Atzilus has an identity, has some kind of a specified existence, and therefore it's something new and utterly inconsequential and tiny and insignificant, and as if it nothing compared to the infinite being. Or Atzilus is a revelation of powers or some kind of revealing a hidden power that was in the Ein Sof, but is now coming to revelation, which means that Atzilus would be a continuation of the Ein Sof, would be a revelation of the Ein Sof. So which one is it? So in last chapter, we kind of differentiated between the lights of Atzilus and the Kalim of Atzilus, between the lights and the vessels. Since Atzilus, we said, is a mediator between the Ein Sof, between Hashem and the creation. It's a world, but it's a divine world. It's, so to speak, the tail end of the Ein Sof and the beginning of the creation. It's a meeting point, and therefore it has to contain within itself, like every mediator, characteristics of both sides. So the lights of Atzilus are a continuation of the Ein Sof. Therefore, the lights have no definition, no character, no specification. They're infinite. And the vessels, however, are detailed. They're specific. They are already something, and they're limited to a certain degree. And therefore, they represent the worlds. And Atzilus is this meeting in between, the go-between. So now he's going to continue this theme, and he's going to continue to flesh out a better understanding between between the vessels and the oiros. And remember, in the next Maamor number 4, he's going to dismiss this explanation. He's not going to undo what he said, because whatever we're learning is absolute truths. But he's going to dismiss this explanation and going to give us a much deeper understanding, even deeper than what we're learning. But for now, in this chapter, he's completing the thought in this Maamor, in this discourse, completing the thought of the previous discourse. Now, this discourse was said on the second day of Shavuos. So there were actually, the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, began this monumental task of delivering this monumental discourse over a course of like 3-4 years. It began on the holiday of Shavuos, and on Shavuos itself, he said 3 discourses. One was said on the first night of Shavuos. The other one was said on the second night of Shavuos. That was the second one we just completed, and the third one was said during the daytime of Shavuos. So these are all 3 Shavuos Maamorim, and therefore they're all going to talk about the giving of the Torah, and like the heading of the discourse is going to be. Okay, so let's just get ready to dive right in. And again, I want to encourage all those that were with me, don't give up. At times it gets difficult, it's hard, but I promise you, if you stick it in there, and if you don't understand something, don't worry. Next class will help. Next class will help clarify the class before. Sometimes it might require that you listen to a class once or twice, maybe 3 times. Don't give up. It's worth it, because this is going to take you, your soul, your mind, your entire experience into a whole new realm. This is the entranceway into redemption. This is the ability to immerse ourselves in God. This is what it is. So this is really, really, really powerful. And when I teach it, as I mentioned to you, I did not go through this discourse. I'm just literally reading a couple of discourses ahead. That's what I did. And I haven't really broken my head yet to really understand what I was learning, just to get myself like kind of a little bit of a sense of the GPS, where he's going with this. But while I'm teaching it, a lot of times it's very, I feel like what I'm teaching is like, it's not clear enough. It feels cloudy, feels foggy, but then the next day as we go deeper and suddenly bang, it opens up. So I hope you have the same experience as I do. Together we're like getting clarity and getting deeper and understanding and merging our minds with God. This is this is what it is. It's really incredible. So here we go, without further delay. Vayichan Shom Yisroel neged Ahar. It says in Exodus, Parshas Yisroel, it says that the Jewish people, when they came to Sinai, it says the verse says that they camped by the mountain. But instead of using the terms they camped by the mountain, by Mount Sinai, or opposite the mountain, it says in Hebrew, he camped. Israel, and it uses a singular term, he camped by the mountain. So linguistically, the more appropriate statement should have been, they camped by the mountain, because we're talking about 2 million people. Yet it says he camped. So the sages derive, and Rashi brings it, a Pirush Rashi. Rashi says, like they were like one person, with one heart. The Jewish people felt such oneness at that time, because they all had one desire, and they suddenly experienced themselves as if they were one human being, one person, having just one desire. What was their desire? To receive the Torah, to have this moment of divine revelation. If you would interview every single one of those 2 million people, that's all they can talk about. That was all their aspiration at this moment. As if usually multiple people have different desires, ambitions, wants. Over here, it was one desire to all of them. We can kind of say like how we all felt also like one person the day after October 7th. We like sometimes the pain, it like opened us up, that we all felt just one thing. We felt so together. We felt like one unit, like one person, all of Israel. It didn't make a difference what kind of hat you wore, what kind of kippah you wore. If you had a kippah, you don't have a kippah, how deeply you identify with your Jewishness or not. Suddenly we were all so Jewish, so connected, so one. Hopefully we're going to have that in a positive way. This Tisha B'Av, let it be in the happiest way. With Mashiach, we will discover our intrinsic oneness. In any case, the question he asks in the Maayon, we need to understand, what does it mean that they felt like one person? Meaning, first of all, what does it mean on a deeper level that they suddenly were one? And it seems like that this was a prerequisite to the giving of the Torah. And we need to understand why. Why was this necessary for the giving of the Torah? That they should feel like one dafka. It seems like that from all the preparations that there could have been, this was the important preparation, that the people came to a state of oneness. Why was this a necessary component before the giving of the Torah? With the Reuven, that to understand this, yesh lahagdim. We first preface, he jumps right into what we were talking about earlier. Mashan is bar le'el, this that we explained earlier, that Atzilus, that the world of Atzilus. Mutza acts as a mediator between the infinite one, Hamatzal, the emanator, Elan Avram, to the creations. And the rule by a mediator is Vamamutza, just like an interpreter, like we gave the example, an interpreter has to speak both languages. So every mediator needs to have within itself, has to be able to relate to both parties that it's mediating. Mamutza, the Mamutza Kolol, incorporates Mibeis Madregas from both levels. And so in Atzilus, there has to have both, has to have a representation of the infinite and the finite. So that is that's the lights and the vessels. The Esosphere is the Atzilus of the 10 attributes of Atzilus. Atzilus is primarily a series of attributes, which make up the world of Atzilus. So those 10 attributes are made up of lights and vessels. So as we discussed earlier, the vessels, and the vessels, they are a existence of something. The vessels have an identity. Like chesed is chesed, kindness is kindness, compassion is compassion. Each one has a specific form and definition. Therefore, you can speak of some kind of a definition. and therefore b'pchinas gavul, which has some kind of limitation. However, the lights and b'pchinas belima, but the lights we said are very abstract. The energies are the words he used, belima, without something. The vessels are something. The lights are abstract. They are without something. They're not a thing. They are somethingless or beyond somethingness. And this idea is really a statement from Sefer Yetzirah. I think we learned it inside. Es spherois belima. Even though there are 10 spheroids, they are ma means something. And belima means without something. And without something means it's not defined, which means it's infinite. It has no definition. So you see that in Atzilus itself, the spherot, which are the primary makeup of the world of Atzilus, has within itself that which is beyond definition and definition. It's a combination of both, because it serves as a go-between the Oir Ein Sof, that's Ein Sof means it doesn't have definition, and the Olam, the worlds that have definition. And based on, now we begin chapter 9. That was the introductory remark, the introductory paragraph, and now he goes right into chapter 9. And based on what we said before, based on this concept, which is that Atzilus has both, we will also understand the two contradictory themes that we mentioned regarding Atzilus, which was what brought us to this whole discussion to begin with. He asked the question regarding Atzilus: how come at times we say Atzilus is just, the word Atzilus means to reveal a hidden thing? Like it says by Moshe, he says that the powers of Moshe that were hidden in Moshe became expressed and revealed when Moshe projected his powers onto the 70 elders, right? So over there, it's nothing new, because they didn't have the power to prophesize. Their prophecy was like coming via Moshe through Moshe. So in that sense, we apply the same thing to Atzilus. These are qualities that are part of the Ein Sof, and Atzilus is just a revealer. It's where these powers come forth in a revealed manner. So in that sense, there is nothing new in Atzilus. It's just an emanation of what was, and it coming into an express state. However, on the other hand, we say that even Chachma, which is the first attribute of Atzilus, even wisdom, is considered Yash Me'ayin, is considered something from nothing, which means it is something new, which means it doesn't exist in the source. So now we'll understand based on what we said. The Masha Atzilus be'ein aroch legaba Orein Sof Baruch Hu. This that Atzilus we say is ein aroch, which means you can't trace Atzilus into the Ein Sof, because Atzilus is inconsequential to the Ein Sof. That's when we look at the limitations of Atzilus. We look at the design, and that's the vessels of Atzilus. Those are the vessels. They have limitation to them. See, he's careful. He doesn't say they are limited, because even the vessels of Atzilus are divine. They're elikus, they're divine. But they're b'pchinas gavul. They're within the range of limitation. Why? Number one, the very idea that we can define them with specific powers is already a limitation. And secondly, because we say it's kindness, it's compassion, it's this attribute, that attribute, it's something. Like you said earlier, they're not belima. The lights are belima without a substance, but the vessels have a ma. They have already a something to them. And secondly, even the quantity is that the energy, although in Atzilus itself we learned the kindness is infinite, and the wisdom is infinite, and the compassion is infinite. However, its influence outside comes in a manner of limitation. So we see that that's the traces of Gavul that there is in Atzilus. And from that perspective, from that level, on that we can't say that exists in the Ein Sof, because the Or Ein Sof, what do we say about Or Ein Sof means the light of Ein Sof that is infinite, that has no limit, as Ein Sof that doesn't have a limit. That means it's as if we would say Ein Gavul. There is no Gavul. There's no limit. And the vessels, they have Gavul. So that means that they Ein Aroch. You can't say that they exist in Atzilus in a subtle hidden state, because then the Ein Sof would not be Ein Sof. He would have a bunch of Gavul inside of him. And that cannot be, because he's Ein Sof. This, but then the question becomes, but the lights, again, the finishing thought of this is, however, the lights, the oiros, they are belima. They don't have definition. They're really infinite. So they are a continuation of the Ein Sof. So on them we say that that's Atzilus. Hashem is just emanating the lights that were hidden and now are coming forth. Okay, that would be the answer. But now the question is, he stops for a moment. He right away asks the question, hold it. If we say that the Kelim are Ein Aroch, which means they are completely something new and they have no resemblance and no reflection of the Ein Sof from where they come from. So how do they come from him? How are they suddenly produced? Where were they born? They come from him. There's nowhere else to come from other than from God. There's only one source for everything. So how do they pop into existence if there's no trace of them in their source? How can he give birth to them if he doesn't have them inside of him at all? And the answer is v'savusam, and they're coming into being hu al yedei tzimtzum. They come in the manner in which he produces them is through the tzimtzum. That's very important. That means that they come into existence not through an extension of himself. God doesn't reveal himself to produce them. He does the opposite. He hides himself. It's through his not being that they come into existence, not through his being. In order for them to exist, he has to step aside and hide his existence, which right away tells you that they cannot be a continuation of an expression of who he was, of who he is, and later he expressed that he is expressed in their existence. The opposite, he is hidden in their existence. In order for them to be, he has to become not, and then they can be. So it's almost like, there's two ways I can give you. A person can give something to somebody. One is when a person wants a relationship with the one that he's giving. If I want a relationship with someone that I'm giving, then I give it to you. How? I stand face to face and I give it to you. And then if I don't want a relationship, but I want to give you, but I want it to be that you receive, but it's not like you're getting from me. There's complete cutoff. So for example, there's a halacha. It doesn't mention here. I don't know why it came up to me when I was a while ago. By the way, I just want to say I actually started teaching this a little while ago, and I went halfway through the whole thing, about 20 minutes, and I had my eyes closed because one of the good things about these is I do the recordings not live. So I'm teaching and I have my eyes deeply closed, and I open my eyes after to check to how long I'm recording already, and after 22 minutes about, I see it says, the whole recording kind of got disconnected after 8 minutes. I have to say it's a little frustrating, and I had no patience to go and do it a second time. But there we go. We're going to push through. I found out what the problem was. But in any case, so that's just me having to voice my frustration, having to do this a second time. So in any case, what was I saying? Because I'm talking Narishkeit, I forgot already what I'm saying. So it occurred to me this halacha. What's the halacha? There is a halacha that says, for instance, if a person makes a neder, a person makes a vow that so and so will not have any benefit from them, right? I don't know, I got into a fight or whatever it is, and say, you know what, I'm disowning you. You're not allowed to have any benefit from me. I don't want to have anything to do with you. And then you find yourself in a situation where the person, God forbid, is in a dangerous situation. They need help. The Talmud says a situation, you're together with the other fellow in a desert, and they need and they don't have any water, and you have a canteen of water. The person doesn't know where they're gonna die of thirst, and you have enough water, and you want to give it to them. You're not allowed to, because you made a vow. So what you can do is, or in a situation where the person has nothing to eat and you have money, and they don't have any money, so one of the things you can do is you can put the money, or you can put the water on a rock, and you can say, this water is hefker. I disown this object, this entity. This water is not mine anymore. I have no it doesn't belong to me. And then the person goes and takes it, which means the relationship between you and the person receiving the water has become completely disconnected. So you are transmitting, you are giving the water, but you're giving the water through a no, not through a yeah, not through a contact, but through a not. And a similar idea we have over here. Of course, it's coming from Hashem, but the way Hashem is producing it is not through a communication with it, but through an absence of communication, through a not. Especially regarding the first symptom, we know it says that the first symptom is different than all the other symptomim. All the other contractions that there is billions and billions of contractions of how God contracts his light until he produces the world. But all the other contractions means that he diminishes the light, he lessens its power, he lessens it. But the first symptom is that Hashem literally makes that the light goes down to zero. There's nothing left of the Or Ein Sof. And that's how, so you see it's a complete cutoff. And the Mekalim are primarily produced by the not through the yeah, like we discussed in last year. Although we spoke earlier, and he's gonna discuss that later that there is, in order from the no itself, nothing could be made. So there has to be a reintroduction of the kav, a reprojection of the kav. But we're gonna see how that does not ruin this idea that the Kalim that does not interfere with the idea that we need the Kalim to be completely cut off from their source. We'll see soon how the Kav's re-entry, which is a reinsertion of Hashem's light of the Or Ein Sof to produce, how does this not disturb this idea that we just said? So again, let's read for now. Imagine there was no Kav, and that Hashem from the black hole, from the complete nothingness, is where the Kalim come into existence. That's what we need for now. That's what we need. That's the imagery we need for now. He produces them not through a connection of himself to it, but through a non-connection. So let's read it. The savusam, and they're coming into being. Why they had tzimtzum is through a not. The hainu why they had or it's through an abstraction of the light, a pulling back of the light, as we said earlier. What does that leave you? That the manner in which they came into existence is in a manner of they have no comparison to him, which means there is him, then there is a complete stop of him and something completely new. So you can't trace them into him. That's the point. Which means that there is a distance. It's not through closeness, it's through distance. And distance over here means infinite and absolute distance. Okay. Now, that's the Kalim if we try to, when we're measuring their connection to the Or Ein Sof. How do they relate to the Or Ein Sof, the infinite light that was before the Tzimtzum? The answer is zero. Because there is a complete block on that infinite light, and then suddenly these vessels are here. Okay. However, if you remember earlier, we discussed that when Hashem brings about the tzimtzum, what else happens? He hides the infinite light, and suddenly something appears. What appears? Traces of the infinite light are left over. Remember, we gave the example, and that we call that the rishimo. So if you remember, that's like a paper that you erase the writing, but then, especially if you pick up the paper and look under the light, you see slight traces of what was once there. And that's called Rishimu. And we said that the Kalim are really created not from the blackness, from the zeroness, from the nothingness, because nothingness can't create. But we said that there are traces left over of the Or Ein Sof. And those traces is the source, that's the space. Remember, we learned that that's the makoim, that's the space. And from the space, that produces Kalim, because Kalim are also like the concept of space. So comes out that maybe through the Rishimu. And what's the Rishimu? The Rishimu is really a trace of the Or Ein Sof. So that would seem to imply that the vessels are linked with the Or Ein Sof, because they come about, they are born from what? From the Rishimu. and the Rishimu is a trace of the Or Ein Sof. So you can't say that there is a complete cutoff. Yes, the light was completely hidden, but there is these traces that are still there, and that's a trace of the Or Ein Sof, and the Kalim are a continuation of that. So shouldn't that mean that the Kalim have a connection to the Or Ein Sof, not a complete disconnect? In other words, if I can apply the halacha that we were talking about before to this case. So imagine if the Or Ein Sof would make a vow that he doesn't have anything to do with the Kalim. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the Kalim. And then we spoke about that so he disappears and he puts it down on the rock. And then but the way he puts the water down on the rock is that he says, I have nothing to do with it. But if he still leaves a tiny little string attached, even if it's just one small little string of himself, let's say he ties a little string of himself there, then he would be in violation of the vow, because even though he said hefker, imagine he says I'm being mafkerit, I'm making this hefker, which means it's ownerless, but really besides I still own it regarding so and so. Then maybe he halachically would not be allowed to give it to that person, because he didn't completely disown it. So that's perhaps a little metaphoric to what we're asking over here, right? Okay, but so therefore he's going to say that the fact that the Kalim are a product of the Rishimu, even to the Rishimu, they are created not through a relationship, but through also in a hidden way. Let's see how he says it. Kamoy and so to his savusan. They're coming into existence. These Kalim, they're coming into existence. Misharshan from their root, Maharishimu from the Rishimu, which seems to enable a bond, a connection. Hu bederech ein aroch. So he says, no. Yes, the Rishimu is a trace of the Or Ein Sof. The Rishimu to the Or Ein Sof is connected. But the way these vessels are produced from the Rishimu is in a manner of a complete disconnect. Hu bederech ein aroch is also in a manner of ein aroch, of where they're inconsequential. Shaharei. Why? Rishimu, the whole concept of Rishimu, hu b'chinas koyach nelam. The whole concept of Rishimu is that it's a hidden power. Just like we said, remember, let's go back and down memory lane a moment. Let's go back. What did we say about Rishimu? What's Rishimu? Rishimu is the power of limitation that's in the Or Ein Sof. And if you remember, the power that we brought from the Sefer Avodas HaKodesh, what did he say? What's this whole Rishimu business? What is it? We said that in the end, and the tzimtzum, the contraction reveals these hidden powers that are in. We said it means that since God is perfect, since the infinite light is perfect with absolute perfection, so it can't just be infinite. It has to be able to affect in a finite way. And that's the Rishimu, is the power of Hashem to limit himself. But remember, before the tzimtzum, before the contraction, the Rishimu was not noticed because it was included in the infinite. Because really the Rishimu is part of the infinite. It's not a finite power. It's because Hashem is limitless. He's without any limitation. He has to be able to limit himself too as part of his infinity. That's the point. It's part of his infinity. So when the infinite was revealed, you didn't even notice this limiting power. But when we hide the infinite, then we only see this finite power. Okay, but what do we see from here? Number one, the Rishimu really is part of the infinite. And that strengthens the question we said earlier. If the Kalim come from the Rishimu and the Rishimu is really part of the infinite, then you're linking the Kalim to the infinite. It's not complete disconnect. But over here, he's answering the question. Why is he answering? Because he says, what is Rishimu? Rishimu is the power of Hashem to limit. And the power of limit means to hide his infinity. What does limitation mean? If God is infinite, and yet all that is going to be shown is a tiny little cube, what is that cube? And he's exhibiting himself through a cube, which is a small little 2x2, that means that this power is not a power that's revealing him, but it's a power that's hiding him. Yes, it's not like Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is a complete disappearing of God, as if he's not there. This is an expression. It's an expression of something, but its power is this. It's hiding, not he's hiding. In other words, if someone doesn't know that this is an infinite being, if someone sees just the cube emerging, might even think that this is a finite being, not even know that there is an infinite power over here. So the power of Rishimu is a power of koyach ne'elam. It's a power of concealment. And therefore, since the Rishimu itself is a koyach ne'elam, when the Rishimu influences, something coming from the Rishimu is in a manner, the Kela, when they emerge from the is not through revelation, but through concealment. It's almost like, the Mossad. The Mossad does its activities. Something happens in Tehran, and we know Israel is involved, but it's a koach ne'elam. It's not through there's no trace, there's no fingerprints, there's nothing there that will trace them back to its source. It's like it happens there. We know that it came from there, but without any connection, no strings attached, nothing there. That's the way the Rishimu influences the Kelim. It's not in a manner of kiruv dveikus, meaning it's not in a manner of connection and attachment, but in a manner of disconnection. And that's the difference between the kav and the rishimu. Kav comes in a manner of the revealing of the Ein Sof, and the rishimu comes in a manner of concealment. I know this is deep and confusing, so keep the confusion till tomorrow. Hopefully we'll resolve and we'll get a better understanding. We'll break through this. Meanwhile, let Mashiach be here today.